Excellent. So, hi, my name's AJ Hartley. You probably already know that. This channel does lots of different things, and today thought we would do something a little different, which is it emerged out of a conversation on Facebook, and we immediately identified ourselves as the Jaded Writers. And I should say that jaded does not mean that we quit. It just means that we kind of see the world from the experience of having been around the block a couple of times. And so we wanted to have a conversation about how it actually works to be a writer, to be a novelist specifically. And so I have three friends, three guests here. I don't know if I guess you're going to see things the way that I am. So directly underneath me, as it were, is Diana Peterfreund.
Oh, okay. That's where I am? Cool.
That's
not where you are, where I am. You're under me.
Okay.
Well, you're under Andrew.
Oh, I'm above. Okay.
I'm like Mrs. Brady over here.
So, Diana, you want to say something quickly about yourself and what you do?
Oh, I'm Diana Peterfreund, and I have written many books in a variety of genres, mostly books for teens, but I've also written adult books. I've written middle grade books. I've written lots of short stories. I've done IP work. I've done a lot of romance novels under pen names. I've published with New York publishers, small publishers. I've self-published. So yeah, I've been around the block a lot.
Yeah. And sitting next to her, we have Mary Mancusi.
Hey. My first book was published in 2005, so I'm a dinosaur in book publishing. And I started out doing adult romance, kind of chick lit-y style, and then went to YA, young adult, and then went to middle grade. And I guess I'm just getting younger as the years go on. But right now I'm working for Disney and doing a lot of tie-in books for them, which is actually a really fun thing for me because I am a big Disney nerd anyway. So it's kind of like a dream come true. But there's been a lot of bumps in the road over the years. And so I always see these newbie writers come in all fresh and sparkly. And I'm like, oh, honey, there's a lot of oh, honeys when I see them online, because, it really is a marathon, not a sprint.
Mm-hmm. And directly above Mary is John Hartness.
Sorry about that, Mary. Yeah, I guess I'm the new guy on the block. My first book was published in 2010. So while I'm the new guy, I'm also a dinosaur in the publishing industry because everything has changed since I started. I started off purely self-published, and then I sold a series that I self-published to a mid-sized press. Then I self-published more things, and then somehow I decided to start a press because I'm insane. And since 2016, when we founded Falstaff Books, we've published close to 300 titles in the last 6 years, and that's why I drink. I've written YA, I've written adult horror, adult science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, comedy, and I just this week finished my very first non-supernatural novel. I wrote a straight thriller with no magic anywhere, except it was certainly pulling a rabbit out of a hat to finish the damn thing.
Excellent. So as you can see, we've published in different genres. We've worked, as Mary said, big press, medium-sized press, small press, self-pub. We've written between us bestsellers, award-winning things, and other books which have either not sold at all or then gone out into the world and done badly. So part of the conversation that we wanted to have was to issue a kind of corrective to some of the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed stuff that we see online. And I don't mean to be cynical about it, but I do think it might be helpful to have a little sort of straight talk, because I think a lot of people's impressions about how a life as a writer works are just not really right. And I think their sense of how much money people make is not right, and how we get paid and how we function, is all stuff that we can talk about and come at from different
angles. One thing
angles.
I notice is that there's, especially online, there gets to be this kind of absolutism that happens, and it's all based on either who someone's like entry point is in publishing, because there are like all these people who will sell you a course. It's like, if you write this many books and you do it like this and you self-publish it like this, then you will make this much money. Mm-hmm. And then they even have all these testimonials. Oh, I did what he said, and this worked out exactly well. And I'm like, but you know what? I've been on your Facebook group, and there are like hundreds of people on that Facebook group saying that they did all those things and it didn't work. Cause so like, there's no, Marianne and I being in YA in the like sort of mid-aughts. And then also there was kind of everybody wanted to do it just the way that Stephanie Meyer had done it, right? And so like I would talk with these new writers who were like, oh no, what you do is you do a 3-book series and then you start your new series before the 4th book in your series comes out. And I'm like Stephanie Meyer. And they're like, no, that's just how it's done. And I'm like, because Stephanie Meyer made a lot of money doing it that way. But it doesn't always work that way. And so I feel like when you've been in the business a really long time, that like you watch these waves of this is how it's done and this is how everyone does it, and this is definitely like the only way it's ever been done. And then it's interesting sometimes when you see these like little baby authors come in and they'll be like, well, when Cassandra Clare got her first $1 million book deal, and I was like, oh yeah, actually, like I like was there the day Cassie got a book offer, and it was nothing. It was like a nice 5-figure, like, no, don't quit your day job book deal.
Yeah.
It's just like false history. They're like, well, she's made millions and millions of dollars, which is true. It's a huge hit, but like, it didn't start out that way. It started out, a nice little book deal. My first book deal was bigger than Cassie's.
Mike Mamet wrote a blog. He's a mid-list mill sci-fi author. I think he's got 3 or 4 books out. Great dude. He's got a blog post that just dropped today talking about his beginning and his first advance and then negotiating for his second contract and really getting granular, kind of similar to what I think we'll probably do in this conversation.
Wait, there are still blog posts?
There are. I was surprised too.
TikTok artist. Where are you, Marianne? Don't tell the TikTok girl.
Yeah, I still technically have a blog. I don't think I haven't posted to my blog since I had my website redone in 2019. But yeah, Mike talks about his first advance, which was less than $10,000. And I feel fairly comfortable saying this because he put it on the damn internet and posted the link to all his Twitter followers. So, and then as he's negotiated, he did a better job negotiating for himself on the next book. And that now he's doing a book with Falstaff and did not get a better advance. But that's another thing, is that just because you got a 6-figure advance this year doesn't mean that your next contract is going to be for a 6-figure, 7-figure, or even 5-figure advance.
Or is going to sell it all.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen so many authors, maybe 10 years ago that were getting 6-figure, huge advances on their very first book. And I'm like, this is not going to end well, because you don't have a readership base. You are completely dependent on the publisher and the fickleness of whether they're going to promote your book or not. if they're going to get it into stores or not, if Barnes & Noble is going to buy in. There is no guarantee that you're going to sell 1,000 books, never mind what you'd need to pay off that advance or to make your book profitable. Whereas people who started out with like a $10,000 advance, for example, which is, very decent for like a children's book. And then they earn out and they're making money, like years and years later. I still get royalty checks for some of my early books where I only had like a $10,000 or $15,000 advance. I'm still making money 10 years later off of those books. And so if I had made a $1 million advance off those books, I would have not been writing now because I would have been seen as unprofitable, because it's all about profit and loss. And so they'll say, oh, well, we paid her 10 and she made, she'd sold this many books. And so she's profitable, but we paid her $1 million and she sold the exact same number of books and she's a failure and a loser and we're never going to publish her again. And then it's really hard to come back from something like that.
Yeah. I think one of the myths about publishing is that you just have to, if you can get that first book out, then from that point on, everything's going to be gravy. It's just getting spotted the first time. It's like, no, in some ways, getting the first book published is easier because you have no track record. And unfortunately, a lot of track records don't go particularly well. It's not the fault of the book. It's not necessarily the fault of the author. There's so many different factors involved, but they are going to affect how easy it will be for you to sell your next book and what you'll make for it.
And this is also especially true, I think, when there's a gold rush in a genre and everyone's, paying extraordinary amounts because they want the next whatever it is. And then also it's true because there are like, these big corporate publishers can sometimes give big advances to books and then just completely ignore them. I mean, I've had 6-figure book deals where the day the book comes out, the publisher didn't even tweet about the book. They like tweeted about some other book from some other publisher, like, and it's because it was a lot of money to me. It was not a lot of money to Viacom,
And also because maybe by the time the book has come out, they've decided that trend is not hot anymore. So they've already kind of abandoned it.
Or the editor who was supporting it left, or like they bought another book that's similar and that was the one they decided on, or Barnes & Noble just wasn't as enthusiastic as they thought they'd be, or the cover sucks, or, like a billion trillion reasons why.
But it's always the author, It doesn't matter if the book has starred reviews or appears on state reading lists or like Scholastic puts it in their fair or something. It's like, it's always the author. It's like, oh, no, her books, not her books.
Yeah, it reminds me, that whole thing reminds me of, there's a musician, Sean Carter. You may have heard of him. Hangs out with Beyonce a lot. He released an album called The Blueprint 3. Tuesdays are release days. There was a Tuesday in September, the year that he released this highly anticipated, critically acclaimed album, when 2 of the tallest buildings in the United States were destroyed. And that is not Jay-Z's fault. And the sales for The Blueprint 3 were in the shitter because psychopaths killed a bunch of people. And
I'm trying to think of who this was. This is like a well-known author. Like a really well-known author, but they had a book that was bought for like a huge amount of money and there was like a plane hijacking in it. I want to say it was Tess Gerritsen. I don't know, maybe edit this part out because I don't know if it was her, but there was somebody, they had a book bought for a huge amount of money, plane hijacking, September 11th happened, the publisher like pulled the book and it like really was very bad for them for a long time. It was whoever wrote that book that the Sandra Bullock like astronaut movie was made out of.
That is Tess Gerritsen.
Yes. And she talked about that. She talked about how she thought she was never going to come back from the disaster of the plane hijacking book, which of course, how could you know? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
There's just, how do you know that there's going to be the worst medical health crisis of our lifetime when you've got 50 releases planned for that year?
Yeah, and they're not going to be, because you do a lot of sales through the convention circuit, right? Like,
yes.
So that closing down and that avenue being closed to you, it must have been very, very difficult.
cut 95% of our print sales for 2020.
Wow. Because let me tell you, this is how I met John. We were selling books at this booth at a con. I am not a natural born saleswoman.
That's how I met both of y'all.
And I was sitting here with my little New York published hardcovers. And meanwhile, John was on the other side of the booth selling literal stapled together pieces of paper that were like the first 3 chapters of his next book or something. And he was...
It was this book.
Right, but they weren't printed. They were just literally stapled together pieces of paper. And he was selling them for $5 a piece. I'm sitting there looking at this man with my mouth open, being like, this man could sell sand in the desert. I don't know how he's getting this done.
There's a lot to be said for having a career before coming to writing. And when that career is selling things that are significantly more expensive than even the most expensive hardcover book, it gets a lot easier to ask somebody for $20 when 2 years ago you were bidding on $30 million construction projects. Mm-hmm. Because you can just say, oh, come on, it's $20. You don't give a shit. Give me your money. And they will.
Yeah, he's great at it. So I sat there thinking to myself, I'm like, when Falstaff happened and when all of that stuff happened, I was like, yeah, of course he can go to a con and sell just truckloads of books, because I watched him do it. I watched him sell stapled together pieces of paper. Imagine if there was a pretty cover on it.
God, the worst part of that is that the first cover for that book wasn't much better than stapled together pieces of paper, because I created that cover. And you can tell, but it sold thousands of copies. And for a self-published book, that's a really good, hell, that book's been going for 10 years now. And I keep it around. I still sell that book at cons today.
I think, Diana's point from before is a really important one, that when things go well, everybody takes credit. And when things go badly, everybody blames the author. And mostly for things that we have no control over. And I'm like you, Diana, in that I have zero interest in self, in selling stuff. I'm the world's worst salesman, as John will tell you. And
he's definitely in my bottom 5.
Yeah, and that was last year I did the booth. I looked at John and I looked at Tamsin and I was like, this is not for me. This is not in my my little Venn diagram of strengths or whatever. I'm not an Enneagram salesperson.
and this is an important thing to think about if people who are watching this are trying to decide what kind of publishing they want to do. This is really important, especially if you're with a small press or you're self-publishing, that you are going to be responsible for all the sort of publicity and marketing, and that's your job.
Well, it's like we were talking about earlier. Marianne does great on TikTok, and she has this video background and producing background, and she likes it.
The rest of us
I would hate it.
Yeah.
The rest of us avoid it like the plague.
Well, I would argue that even if you're with a large publisher, you still need to market and push yourself and do publicity stuff almost as much, unless you're one of the favored childs, that they are going to do a full court press for you. But that's very rare. That's the exception to the rule. And you can't expect them to do it, because they probably won't. Even if they promise they will, they probably won't. And then you're going to be left high and dry. And a lot of people will say that you can't move the needle with self-promotion. And there are definitely cases where I would agree, like, how many books are you going to buy because people going to buy because you posted, I have a new book on Twitter. But you do need to get yourself out there, whether it's you're in school visits, if you're doing children's books, or conventions, if you're doing sci-fi fantasy. TikTok is, again, it's an amazing place to sell books right now. There is an author who had a mid-list YA title that they had just given up on, that had released in this past summer. And it was just kind of the small book. And they're like, okay, well, whatever, that went out and nothing happened. And then in the fall, a huge book talker brought it up on there, did a TikTok on it, and suddenly it was a New York Times bestseller and it sold out everywhere. And the publisher's like, what is going on? What happened? Why is this dead book like doing stuff? And they're rushing to print and everything. And it was literally because one person who was an influencer put it out there and it got millions of views and they became a bestseller overnight. And it was the publishers are just, huh?
That wasn't the author. That was like lightning. That was some book talker decided.
No, I agree. But, authors can also have, you can make connections with book talkers instead of, a publisher will say, oh, well, we got you this blog tour where you're going to go write blogs.
Wait, do still blogs?
Interview questions. No, even in my last book, I got that. And I'm like, oh, go answer 15 interview questions that no one's going to read on some blog. Whereas they could have gone on to TikTok and said, look, this person only, does Disney books and they have 1 million followers and all they do is, let's send them something so they can do a feature on your book. And they don't move like that. So as the author, you need to move a little bit faster and a little bit smarter and figure out where it is right now. And yes, it means learning new platforms all the time. And some platforms might not be your jam, and that's fine. I don't think it's good to force it because I've seen some really bad author TikToks out there where you're like, oh no. But you have to constantly reinvent yourself to get yourself out there if you want to push your own books. And I have seen, when I make an effort on a book, there are more sales, but it's hard during the pandemic. And so you do have to go online more. My publisher said for my newer book, this wasn't a Disney thing, but they were like, oh, well, we have to lower your advance for your next book because your book didn't do, that well. And I'm like, oh, the book that came out in May during the pandemic when schools were closed and bookstores were closed didn't do well. Oh my gosh. Shock.
Yeah. And I've heard that from a lot of people. So they use
that as an excuse to lower my advance. And it's like, there was nothing I could do at the time. And so I don't know.
And I just think, I think you're a real whiz at the self-promo thing. I mean, you were up there with, wasn't it like Barack Obama is like top sales at Book People one year because you had like funneled all your pre-orders to
I think it was Matthew McConaughey, but yeah.
McConaughey. And that's in Texas, y'all. So you can imagine. But they Book People in Austin, Texas, they published just who were the top selling books at our bookstore. And, Mary's an Austin author and she's very supportive of Book People. And she was on the list. It was Matthew McConaughey, Mary Mancusi.
I'll give you an example for that one. So I did a Frozen book and I was trying to think of where, and again, it was during the pandemic, where I could sell books when I couldn't have a book signing. And so I went on a Disney doll collectors Facebook group, and they have, 20,000 people in this doll collector Facebook group, and they collect Disney dolls. It's not anything to do with books. And I said, but it's a sales site, so you can sell things. So I said, I am a Disney author and I have this new book out and I would be happy to send you an autographed copy if you'd like to buy one. And I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of orders from that one post. And I wanted to support local bookstores. So I bought all the books through Book People and sent them out myself. It was a labor of love. But, I made so many sales from just doing something like that, whereas if I had gone to Barnes and Noble to sign books, I would have got 3 people wandering in the store and 2 of them would have asked me where the bathroom was.
Exactly.
One of my favorite book signing stories is actually AJ.
Oh, now this is going to make me look bad. I guarantee it.
No, maybe. In his defense, it was a rainy Saturday afternoon, but I saw that he was doing a book signing 15 minutes from my house, which means that it was halfway between his house and mine. Because we live across town from each other. So I was like, hey, I'll go see AJ. And I go in and it's a Books A Million and it's rainy. And there is a stack of copies of 50 Shades of Grey as tall as my hair, for God's sake. And AJ's sitting there at a table about 10 feet from this pile of mom porn. And we sat there for 2 hours. And one person stopped and talked to AJ to actually talk, and the rest were either where's the bathroom, where's the coffee shop, or where's 50 Shades of Grey, literally right there. And that, I think, was the time that I decided I'll maybe never do another solo book signing ever again, because that
book signings.
Until until I get to a point where there's people lining up an hour ahead of time to get me to sign stuff, and God, why would you? I'll sign with a bunch of people. Yeah. That way we can all bring in 3 people, and then look, we got 10 people here. So rock on. I know 10 isn't divisible by 3.
There was a period of time where I stopped doing signings at corporate bookstores, because I did this signing, and it was a group signing. There were like 3 or 4 of us, and we were doing this signing at a Barnes and Noble on Black Friday. And so you can imagine there were a lot of people coming in to purchase Christmas presents for people. And we all had children's books, and like,
seems
that's
perfect.
like a no-brainer Christmas present, right? And Barnes and Noble would only order 2 copies of each of our books for this signing. They like wouldn't order any more copies of our books. Yeah. And so then we obviously sold out in like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they put us like behind the like ebook like display to like the Nook display. This was years ago. Mm-hmm. And we sold out in 15 minutes, and we were like, I don't know what we're supposed to do for the rest of the 2 hours. So I went to the people and I was like, look, I have a box of books in my car, and I will sell them to you. And then you can just order another box of books and I'll like come get them. And like, I know that they do that because I've done it before, but I don't think that the management of this particular bookstore was what it should have been, because not only did they, only choose the 2 books, but they were also like, no, we can't do that. But people kept coming up to us because we had our little, like, we had a little bag of candy, right? And we had our little, like, bookmarks and stuff up. And finally, I was like, follow me to the trunk of my car. And I will, like, super sketchy, like, ring you up in the Barnes & Noble parking lot. And I felt really bad. I was like, these are sales that you could make. Yeah. But you're not going to do that. So this is how it is. And after that, I was like, I think it was like 10 years before I did another book sales in a corporate store rather than an indie store, because any indie store I go through, if they run out of my stock, because especially when you write in a lot of genres, you never know who the audience is going to be, right? Mm-hmm. Like, is the audience going to come and they're going to want sci-fi? Are they going to want middle grade? Like, what is going to happen? But I've never before been in a situation where we've run out of books and I'm like, oh, I have extras in my car, and they haven't just bought them off of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether they buy them or whether they're like, we buy them and then we'll get them from like in the next Ingram order and we'll call you and you can come pick them up. I've never been in that situation before. And it was very frustrating to me, but that is a tip for authors. When you do a signing, bring a bunch of extra books, keep them in your car, because if it is a huge success, or if they do order wrong, or if for some reason the order doesn't come in, because that's happened to me a lot too, where you get to the event and they're like, oh, you know what? Like, we don't have your books. And like, you drove however many hours, or you took off work, or you did this to get to the event and find out that they don't have your books because of some sort of screw up with the distributor, supply chain issues, who knows?
And like, nobody thought to check and contact you beforehand.
Right. So always have that box of books in your trunk, so that it's not a huge waste, because I've done, 100 signings, and that is the only time that the booksellers didn't work with me to buy the books off of me or to like replace whatever they sold or whatever. I mean, usually they're very, very, booksellers are very, because they want to sell books, right? And you have the supplies. They'll just buy them right off of you.
So, I did about, I want to say.
Always have a box in your trunk.
About 12 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that, I did a signing in Charleston, in South Carolina. And if you know Charleston, right by where the old market is, that Meeting and Market, you know the bookstore I'm talking about? It's not there anymore. I can't remember what it was.
I don't remember the name, but I remember spending an inordinate amount of money in there.
And I went in to do my signing, and they had like 80 copies of the book, and I was just like, okay. And they're looking at me, and of course the place is deserted because it was the middle of summer, and the city is full of tourists, but everybody's outside and doing touristy stuff and wandering around, and they're not in the bookstore. So I sit down, I'm sitting at my table, and nothing is happening at all. And then all of a sudden, I look up, there's this almighty crash, and I look up and it's thunder. There's a colossal downpour. And suddenly the store is packed, and we sold all 85 books. As the most successful. Like, I was like, yay.
So you're saying that for the Shakespeare Association event in April, we're hoping for rain.
But you'll have a captive audience in the dealer room, but they are all going to be academics, and they're not used to buying fiction. So it's going to be an interesting exercise. I have a book coming out in April called Burning Shakespeare, which is a sort of comic fantasy time travel-y adventure thing that John is publishing with Falstaff. And we're actually going to launch it at the annual Shakespeare Association of America meeting in Jacksonville, Florida this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I can't quite believe that you're actually going to drive down to do this, John.
It is going to be the foremost gathering of Shakespearean academics in the United States, and me.
I might drive down for this. I might drive down for this.
Yes. Well, it's all theater, right?
All right, talk amongst yourselves. I got to go get my plug because I'm running out of battery.
Okay.
And I can talk in an educated fashion about a half a dozen or so of the plays that I've done. I guarantee you I've played more roles than most of the academics.
Well, yeah, but they won't think that's an asset.
Right. What about, it's Falstaff books? I mean, don't you get points just for that?
I should.
Yeah. I should have got you to bring out the Hamlet as well, John. We could have done that at the same time. Didn't we talk about the Hamlet?
We did.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, with that, it's just a cover and layout and print it. So we'll
talk.
We'll talk.
I think it's really interesting what Falstaff is doing. I got an email recently from somebody who's liked one of my unfinished fantasy series for a long time, and they're now acquiring for a small press. They were like, have you ever considered, finishing this fantasy series? Because I think that our press would be interested in doing that. And it was the first time I ever thought about that. And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I feel like if I ever wrote that, like, I have to go to John first. Like, I'm going to go in a small press. Like, I don't know, but it was something I'd never even thought of because, the publisher canceled the series, due to disappointing sales. And for a while it lived on in short stories. Like whenever anyone asked me to contribute to an anthology, I was like, okay, but it's going to be Killer Unicorns. And they were like, great.
Oh, wait, this is the Killer Unicorns thing?
Yeah.
God, I want that.
See,
Hell yeah, I want that. That's the first thing of yours I ever read. I still have the first two of that in hardcover on the shelf in this office.
See, there you go. See, but I have, and so I
book deal in the making right here.
So far we're at 2. You're the only holdout.
Wait, Marianne, you have a book with John?
No, she's the holdout. I'm trying to land you now.
Yeah.
I've done.
So I have, I have these 6. So I have the outline for the 3rd unicorn book that they never bought. And then I have I think it's 6 unicorn short stories. And I thought Triumphant and Other Tales, right? It's a great title.
Yeah.
Also, you did middle grade, John, because I have a perfect book that I'm so sad.
Oh my God,
it's middle grade horror, and it didn't sell, and it's just maddening. But everyone keeps saying it's too niche. it's horror. It's not like big enough. We want you, because they want me to do all the sci-fi, fantasy, big, huge stuff. And it's like, I love this book so much, and it doesn't have a home. And I'm so sad about
and
it.
I don't understand it, especially with sort of like the resurgence we're seeing in horror. Like like all I'm hearing from everyone is horror, 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 horror. I went to this like publisher party. It was like my agency's party at Worldcon in DC.
Yeah.
And my agency had like a party, and almost everyone there was a horror writer. Like it was just, and again, that was like a sci-fi convention, but they weren't like, there were very few sci-fi authors. They were like, it was like 80% horror authors at this agency party.
Yeah, horror's definitely on the come up right now. And look, Mary, I've got your email address, so there'll be a contract in your inbox before I go make dinner. We won't make any money because middle grade without returnable bookstore positioning doesn't make any money, but I'll make the book happen.
I make money when I go and do with middle grade myself.
I've done well with middle grade at cons. Like I went to a like RT or something, and I had a middle grade out, and everybody else had their like romance books out, and I just put out a little sign being like, "Do you miss your kids?" Like, because there were all these women would come to, and they like, I'm like, bring something home to your kids or something. Like that's what the sign said. I sold a lot that weekend. It was brilliant. It was like the best con sales experience I ever had, because they were all buying, Christina Lauren's and whatnot for themselves. And then like my little booth was there, and I was like, buy something for your kids. And they're like, oh yeah, I should.
But it's really interesting because, a couple of things that you've said, the question about the discontinued series, that, books don't perform. And so the old rule was, therefore, nobody will take the rest of the series. Nobody's going to take book 4 of a series where the first 3 are published by somebody else. That's not really true anymore because of small presses like John, who are prepared to say, you know what, if we like the book and we think that there is an audience built in, it might not be a huge audience, but we think it's worth pursuing. And I think this comes to this question, the thing that I find most frustrating, we've all talked about books that we really love and we think are decent, but we can't sell. And this is not because we're clueless. It's not because we have no idea, right? That we're capable writers. We've done this before, but there's a certain book that you can't sell. And often it's because, especially at the moment, it seems, when publishers are looking to win the game with one swing of the bat, that they don't think the audience is big enough. And as you said, it's too niche. It's too small. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't make it not a good book. It might not have a massive audience, but there are going to be a certain number of people out there who love it, And so the question, so then what do you do, right? Do you put it aside and wait for the market to change and hope that one day people will sort of rediscover their love of killer unicorns or whatever it is, right? I was absolutely sure that I would sell that Burning Shakespeare book to a big house. I thought.
So was I. I was really surprised when it came back around to me.
Well, I think we all shopped something or more than something. Oh, I don't know about John, because he's been really busy running his own publisher. But I know that 3 of us have shopped things in the last 2 years that we thought were like slam dunks. I mean, when Marianne told me about her horror novel, I was like, oh, that's gonna like, that title sells itself, like, and things like that. And I shopped 2 things last year that I was positive would sell, and I was baffled when it didn't, because the markets shift, and I think sometimes, especially when you're in a contracting period, like everyone is, they want to go for things that, like exactly like what has sold recently. It's like not necessarily even things that they don't think will sell very large, but they're like, well, that thing that sold well that's like that is like 5 years old or something. And sometimes they don't have vision. My friend Jennifer Barnes, who's doing very well right now with her mystery series, the Hawthorne Legacy. It starts with the Inheritance Games, and it's doing very well. And we were having this whole conversation.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a great book if you like sort of just high stakes, very glamorous, but also like Westing game kind of mystery. It's the combination of those two. But we were talking, and she's super smart about story and publishing and things like that. She's a creative writing professor also. And she was discussing how she thinks sometimes that acquisition editors, they're doing this calculation in their head about what they imagine your book is going to do that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what it is. And that is even more the case when it's a proposal instead of a full that you're trying to sell.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, and that corporate mentality that you have in the big companies, where some CEO says, here's somebody said, well, vampires are finished, so we're not doing any more of those. It's fine. They're not even reading the book. This is not me saying I have a vampire novel I'm trying to sell. I don't. But
vampires are back, though. Actually, just for the record,
vampires are always back. They're practically unkillable.
Wait, vampires are back, Mary. What are you doing? That's like your wheelhouse.
People have been telling me vampires were finished since I started writing vampires in 2010, and that series is 8 books deep, and the check's clear.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think what the problem is, or one of the problems, is that editors now have to present everything to sales and marketing and get their go ahead before they can buy a book. Whereas in the old days, it was between the editor and the author, and the editor thought the book was quality and they thought they could sell it. That would be their deal. And now they have had a lot of reduction in power, especially with big 5 coming, in big conglomerates, that they have to push in and have to get this idea that this is going to be a big seller. And so that's really good for books with high concepts. So like my new Dragon City middle grade sold in a few days after I sent it to my editor, because it's about, which I'm really happy about, but it's about, in a dragon apocalypse, New York City, a young boy with a group of scrappy survivors, and, he befriends a young dragon. And,
let me just tell you about this book,
guys. I could describe it like
pandemic, and I hadn't read anything. And then Marianne goes, I wrote this book. I wrote it and I read it in segments to my daughter every night. And she's like, I'm so stuck on the synopsis. And I was like, oh, well, synopses are my favorite thing. Why don't you send it to me and I'll see if I can help? But I have to warn you, I'm not reading anything. I hadn't been able to read. It was just, it was just too much. This was like in early 2020. So she sent it to me. I stayed up late. I read the whole thing in like one sitting. And the next day I wrote her back and I was like, don't be mad. Here's a 4-page synopsis.
Yeah, I used her synopsis to sell it.
But I was like,
I took her on a cruise because she deserved it.
This is like the first thing I've read all year. This is the first book that I've read. I stayed up all night reading it. It spoke to me in that moment, like the whole idea of people being on opposite sides of a horrible thing that was happening to their society, and like the battles between it. It was just really topical.
The whole thing is a metaphor for the pandemic. It was all my pandemic frustration come out. Like the dad is a prepper and the mom's a dragon sympathizer and the boy is stuck between them. Anyway, but like that's a really easy pitch to sales and marketing. You've got the boy on the skyscraper with the dragon coming down. You can see it as if it were a movie, but like a softer book like My Treehouse on Haunted Hill, where I can't give you the movie pitch on it very easily. That doesn't make it a worse book. I love that book just as much as I love New Dragon City, but it's really harder to go to sales and marketing and say, here's this book. It's kind of quiet in the sense it's a horror, but I don't know, just, I can't even explain it on the Zoom call. So clearly it's not as easy to explain.
Last semester, I was teaching a creative writing class, which Diana zoomed into. And one of the things that we did, and it was a YA fantasy creative writing class, and one of the things my students really struggled with, and I think resented, was the fact that I was pushing really hard right from the start of the semester for them to come up with an idea, and they just wanted to write pages. They just wanted to, well, I don't know where the story's going. It's just going to, no. And I kept saying, what's going to sell the book? And I kind of hate this. but what will sell the book has more to do with the concept than the execution.
Okay, but I had like two things that last year that I thought were very high concept, and judging on the request rate, like they, people were responding very well to the concept, and then they didn't sell. And right now, the thing I'm working on is sort of the opposite of all that. It's very difficult to explain. It's very Boise. But I'm like, hey, if I have to write a whole book and shop it, which is what I want to do, because, now I'm working on this theory that maybe it was that I was shopping proposals that was the problem and people didn't have a chance to fall in love with the whole book. I'm just going to put every weird thing in it that like I usually keep out of proposals because I don't want my weird to show too much. And then we'll see what happens. So we'll see, I guess, because, I have never sold a complete book in my entire career. And my first book came out in 2006. I've never sold. They've all been on proposal. So this is...
I'm the opposite. I never sell on proposal.
This is a very new experience for me. And it's a very, I think, difficult experience for me because I haven't been trained that way. I've been trained to write under contract. I have not been trained to write on spec, with no deadline, with no, like making this all up as I go along. And with my background as a journalist, I wasn't really writing on spec either. So I was getting like an assignment and doing it. So this is like a very, I'm like 20 years into this whole writing gig and I'm like, wait, what? I'm writing a whole book that might not go anywhere.
That's the book I just finished, was the first thing in a decade that I either wasn't contracted for or didn't know from the jump that I was going to publish it myself. This is a book that I think could appeal to a broader audience. So now I get to go through querying and looking for agents and then maybe shopping the book, which probably means that after about 5 or 6 query letters, I'll get frustrated again and just publish the damn thing, because then I'll start getting paid. But that's not exactly the optimal methodology for putting a book out in the world.
Did you guys want to talk about IP at all, which Marianne and I have done a lot of?
Sure, because I haven't done any, but But there's a couple of people that I'm talking to about potentially doing some IP stuff. So yeah.
So let's start by defining IP.
So I think the easiest way to say it is someone else's intellectual property. That's what IP stands for, that you are writing the book for. So it could be a board game or a video game or a movie or TV series. Someone else owns the characters and concepts that you're writing, and you are hired to write in their world. So unlike a regular book that you license to a publisher, but you still own, they have the license to publish it, then you don't own any of your work and you are writing for hire for the company. So for me, I write for Disney, and Diana has written for Hasbro with the Clue series. She's also done movie tie-ins where like a novelization of a film. So there's all sorts of opportunity in tie-in novels. And the thing is, they sell really well usually because you have an audience before the book is even started. So for example, if you write a Frozen book, well, the last Frozen 2, I don't know how many billions of dollars it made, but it was a lot. And so, there are diehard Frozen fans out there that are going to pick up anything that says the word Frozen on it. They're not picking up the book because of me. They're not going and buying all my works after they read the Frozen book, but you can sell a gazillion copies of this book.
And are you getting a royalty on those, or are you just paid up front a flat fee?
So my first one, I got a flat fee, and the new one that comes out in July, there's a royalty, but the royalties tend to be a little bit smaller. But Disney pays really well as a flat fee, so I'm very satisfied to just get that initial money. But I know some of the authors that have done Twisted Tales, which is their really, really big popular series, which is sort of like the, what if Cinderella, didn't fit the glass slipper, or whatever, and they're like fan fiction from Disney novels, and they always hit the list and everything. Those authors can make good royalties off of those books.
Yeah, I've also done IP. It's different when the publishing company is not the owner of the IP. So it's like a double licensing kind of scenario. So the publisher in that case usually goes to the holder of the license. In my case, it was Hasbro. And they go, we have this idea for YA novels based on Clue. We want to do like a Riverdale kind of thing. And Hasbro's like, okay. So then the publisher buys a license to do the novels off of Hasbro. And then they turn around and they hire a writer. So, they've already like invested, that money in order to use the rights. And usually there's, moral clauses and things like that. And IP can be sort of anything. It can be a novelization where you're like sticking close to the story that already exists. Like there have been novelizations of all the Star Wars movies. There was a novelization of, anything really, any movie. I did one for a romantic comedy called Morning Glory that starred Harrison Ford. It was set in a morning show. That one had to stick pretty close to the, the script of the actual story. For the Clue books, despite it being work for hire and IP, I kind of had free reign to do whatever I wanted. I invented the setting. I invented the characters. I mean, they were all named like Mustard and Scarlet and things like that, but they were my own sort of inventions, and I kind of did everything.
And did you pitch that idea to them as part of the process of you getting the gig?
No, I know that that's sometimes how it works. I have a friend who's writing IP books for another Hasbro property right now, and they pitched the whole idea. But they went around, I guess, to agents that they know, and they're like, hey, do you have any writers that would be interested in writing this kind of thing? And my agent was like, oh, I think Diana would love it. So she came to me, and we were all given like a fake scenario, like a fake Clue mystery murder house kind of scenario to write 2 chapters of. And I wrote those 2 chapters, and I think a lot of other people did too, because I've heard from other YA authors, they're like, you got the Clue gig, and I assume that this happens with actors too, right, John? That like you guys all see each other at the audition, and then you find out who got the job later.
Oh, yeah.
So I did that, and then they said, we want you to come up with a whole new scenario after I was hired. So I was already hired, but they didn't want to use whatever their made up scenario was. And so it was a new one. And so I ended up using one of the characters from my chapters because I really liked her, who was like this former child star who had just tired of Hollywood. And it was during the whole like kind of Harvey Weinstein Me Too kind of thing, and I was like, oh, this feels very topical, so I'm going to use this like abused former child star because she's got like a lot of great backstory. And so I took her, and then I made entirely new cast of characters, and I put them in a rural Maine boarding school because my cousin was a teacher at a rural Maine boarding school, and he had stories. So, so I just was like, yoink. And I thanked him by killing him in the first book. I made him the headmaster, and then
I've been baffled by the fact that people want to be killed in books. I mean, I've done anthology Kickstarters where people pay for the privilege of dying in my short story. And I'm like, sure. If it makes
you know what it is? People like Easter eggs, man. They like them. Anytime I put an Easter egg in a book, people go nuts. And I've done this thing, like almost accidentally, but now it's a thing and I have to keep going, where in all of my books that are set like in this world, like it's all the same world. So like my middle grade sci-fi like mentions the fake college in my like original Chicklet series. Like it's all there. And anytime they come across like a mention of Eli University, and my copy editors hated it. They're like, Eli University is not a thing, And I'm like, it's fine. And then my editors are like, stat, The readers notice. My readers who have like my faithful few readers who like followed me from series to series are like, oh, she's gonna go to Eli. Like,
yeah, I blew up John Scalzi in my last book. So a lot of people on Twitter love that.
That's what it is. They love an Easter egg. So they want to be the Easter egg. They want to be the person who notices that like Indiana Jones's license plate says like THX 1138 or whatever.
Yeah.
They want that.
Definitely. I will say, if you are writing for a property that is big and has a lot of fans, luckily Clue is so open-ended. I mean, the only thing that really, I mean, it's a board game except for the movie, but your take was so different than the movie. It wasn't like comparable. But when you're taking characters that are actually in a property, you really have to remember that your audience has formed parasocial relationships with a lot of these characters, and they know the characters better than you, or at least they believe that they do. And it doesn't matter what's in the actual film. They have their own ideas of who these characters are. And, you know, you can be faithful to the source material, which you have to be because you're writing for, let's say, the Walt Disney Company. You have to be really careful with details because they know all the details. So you really have to either be a fan yourself or just go over with a fine-tooth comb every single thing you say, because the studio may not catch it, but the fans will definitely catch it. And then they will think you don't know what you're doing and they won't respect you. Also, you know, there is controversial opinions. Like, I don't think I would ever want to write a Star Wars book because the fandom, should I use the word toxic? I don't know, but like,
if you don't, I will.
Divided. And so, you know, you're opening up a can of worms by putting your name on a Star Wars book, and you know there's going to be people who love your book and there are going to be people who don't love your book, and everyone's going to be very vocal on which side they're on. And so you have to have a thick skin, and you have to just to know that this is not about you. You've been hired to do a job, and you have done your job, and at the end of the day you cash your paycheck and go home, and don't go on Twitter and read what people are saying.
I think being a fan is true wherever, because I do like whenever you're doing work for hire, because I think that you're writing for the fans, right? You're not writing this book for someone who's never heard of Clue. You're not writing this book for someone who doesn't like Clue. Like, you're never going to convince someone to even pick up a book about Clue that doesn't like Clue or isn't intrigued by it. So you are writing for the fans, and if you don't have respect for them and for what they love about the story, then you're just, I mean, like, what are you even doing here? You know, and that can mean a lot of things. But I was always surprised when I would get reviews that would say, like, it's very clear that, you know, Miss Peterfreund is a big fan of Clue. And I'm like, are there people writing tie-in books that aren't like a big fan of like what they're doing? You know, because like, we are writing for people who love these properties. And, you know, for me, like when I was writing Clue, I stuck as many movie quotes in as possible, because I was like, come on, if you're a fan of Clue, there's your Easter egg that you're gonna love.
On the side of my face. I remember that in the book.
I know. And I know that with Marianne, I listened to the audiobook of Dangerous Secrets, which is her story about Elsa and Anna's parents. It's their like love story when they fell in love. I'm listening to the audiobook with my kids in the car, and like, there were a couple lines where they were like, oh, did you hear what she said? Did you hear it? Did you hear it? And, you know, like, that's what you're writing these books for, because you want that moment of connection between the reader and you, so that they trust you and they like believe, you know, they trust that their beloved property is in good hands.
Yeah.
If you want an example of that going sideways, another Hasbro property, Magic the Gathering's last novel, didn't go over well with fans of the game, and that's almost a 30 years of lore, and all of a sudden this gay character is straight, and that has not sat well with the fans of the lore. Sometimes they do a really good job, like the last set they released, Shannon Maguire wrote some of the short stories, and Shannon plays Magic and loves the game. They've had Brandon Sanderson do a Magic novel, and it's his fault I play that damn game again. So he loves the game and is very tied in. But whoever they got for this last one, no bueno.
I mean, I think with work for hire, you and IP, you have to respect the property and you have to respect the fans. And, especially when you do have a property that has divided or contentious fans, maybe you're writing for one segment or the other. And if it's big enough, the world is big enough for all of those things to kind of have place in it. I mean, Star Wars certainly is, with the amount of work that's out there, you can find what you want. But the Star Wars kind of book's been going on for decades now. So.
Were you guys fans of the areas in which you work before you took on the gigs?
I definitely had the Clue movie memorized since I was a child. So when my agent's like, "Do you like Clue?" I was like, there were 10 exclamation points in my email. So
yeah.
Because sometimes people go, "Oh, what's your dream IP?" And I'm like, I never would have even thought about Clue books. Like, that isn't a thing I would have thought about. So it was good that Abrams thought of it for me.
I think I was hired for the Frozen book first because I dressed up as Elsa in cosplay and my editor saw it on Facebook, but I can't be sure. But possibly.
I did it like 3 or 4 times. And then
I had a 3-year-old when the first one came out, so it was on loop in my house, and I really loved it, and I loved Elsa. And but when I started writing the books, it was on a whole new level because I was a fan, but I wasn't like one of those go on Reddit and like analyze the movie fans. And so I really did a lot of research, not only into just like facts of the Frozenverse, but fandom of the Frozenverse. And so I went into Reddit, I went into articles and Tumblr, and like I read so much fan commentary and opinions and all that. And I kind of absorbed all of it and then started writing the book. And I didn't read any fan fiction because I feel like that would be a conflict of interest. So I didn't go that far. But as far as, like commentary and articles and everything, I think that's fair game. And so you kind of know what the fandom wants to see. What are their questions, especially since it was a prequel? When they watched Frozen 2, what did they want to know about the parents that wasn't explained in the movie? Like I think BuzzFeed did an article like, here's 13 things we still have questions about. And my editor sent it to me and she's like, let's try to answer some of these. And so that was really fun. And the fact I got to make up the answers was very empowering. I was like, wait, I'm contributing to Frozen lore. Like now I have things, and some of the things I didn't get away with, the filmmakers are like, no, like I wanted to name the water knock, but they said no. But I was like, I could be the one to name the water knock. But anyway, I did get to contribute a lot to lore, and as a fan, that was really fun and empowering.
Do you find that you feel constrained when you're doing IP and you find yourself wanting to do your own thing where you're completely in control of everything? Because I haven't done this, and I often struggle with the idea of whether I actually want to or not. Because part of my problem is always that I write whatever appeals to me at any given time, which of course agents and publishers hate because it means there's no continuity from one project to the next.
I think it depends. I certainly know people who had IP projects where they just did not see eye to eye with, the powers that be. And so then they did feel really constrained and they were very unhappy with the final product because of course the owners have the final say on what is or what isn't done in a work for hire. But
you had a lot of freedom, didn't you?
What?
You had a lot of freedom, it seems.
I did. I had total freedom. You remember we got drinks at Dragon Con, and I was like, this is like the one guideline they've given me. And even by the 3rd book, they were like, whatever, do what you want. So, because I think that we had a good rapport, but I think that it really, I had a wonderful editing experience with the Clue books, and it comes down to the fact that my editor at Abrams and also the publisher at Abrams, who originally come up with the idea, they wanted what I wanted. So it was they hired the right person, I think, because we had the same vision. They were like, we want like Riverdale. So we want it to be like really edgy and very campy and over the top. And so that's what I did. And so we didn't really have any conflict about, the storylines and things like that. But that is just a match. I've done my own work, like my own thing that I owned, and my editor and my publisher were just like, this isn't what we wanted. This isn't what we wanted. Yeah. And it's been horrible. And even though it is your stuff and you always have the power to be like, fine, don't publish it. I still want to put food on my table,
Mhm.
weirdly. So sometimes you're like, no, let's work it out. I can't buy this book back, kind of thing. So, you know, with IP, they just fire you and hire someone else. With your own book, you pull it, right? And or you don't. And so I feel like that kind of issue can happen whether or not the book is IP or not.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I feel like mostly Disney has been really good about giving me freedom to, you know, come up with stuff and create lore and all that. And then they'll push, you know, back on some things, and that's fine. Or they see a character a little bit differently than I see them. And so that's fine. And we adjust. However, I think if I ever got fired from all the Disney stuff and I was never writing for them again, I would love to do Frozen fan fiction now. Just like go off the rails. I would be the best Frozen fan fiction writer at this point. And I'd probably have a huge audience if I used my own name.
Mancusi.
They better keep me hired, because otherwise they're in trouble. No, just kidding.
I mean, we've been talking for over an hour. Do you think are there things that you would like to say, particularly to new writers, that you think would be helpful to correct some of their expectations or assumptions? Maybe we can do a quick sort of wrap, and then, you know, maybe we'll do this again sometime. Maybe people will send in some questions for us to talk specifically about, maybe. But yeah, what final thoughts would you like to leave, big or small, with new writers?
I have one. Or go ahead, John.
There's a misconception that writing and publishing one book lets you quit your day job. You may very well never quit your day job. The vast majority of working, published professional writers also have either day jobs or side hustles or some other, or a spouse with a really good job that provides insurance. We all know top level bestsellers who still write mornings, evenings, and weekends. So don't be blown away by this realization that, okay, I'm a published author and I am not Richard Castle, because no one is really Richard Castle. Nobody makes that kind of money on one book a year, and your editor will not show up at your doorstep to demand that you deliver the book and to talk through your writer's block.
Well, he's married to her, or what? So, but yes, I think you're right. And you know, one of the things that I think you're taking for granted there, which we've already touched on, is that sense that even when you do have a book that does really, really well, it has no predictive power in terms of what is going to happen the next year and the next year and the next year. We've all had careers that go up and down quite drastically, I think, you know, and often people don't know, because they don't know. They can look on Amazon or whatever and see your sales and see review numbers, but they can't see your sales. They've no idea. I find that with people who read my stuff, they have no clue how a certain book has sold compared to something else.
Yeah, or that you sold that series 4 years ago and the money's all gone or whatever.
Yeah, or that, okay, you got a $50,000 advance for this one book, which is split up into 5 payments, one of which is after the book is out. So it's not even a friggin' advance. Yeah. It's just
out over like 2 years, right? From the moment they buy the book to then, you know, then the next payment's on signing the contract. Then the next payment is when the book comes out. I mean, my contracts are usually in 3 parts, but even so, that's usually 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
For that money to come in.
When I quit my day job, like 11 years ago, to write full time, we budgeted everything. We moved to Austin. We left New York City because it was too expensive to do it there. And we moved to Austin, which at the time wasn't very expensive, which now is. But we budgeted everything off of my husband's job. And so any money I made, any little pittance would go to house repairs or vacation or bills, but you're not like daily bills, like extra things. And so that's always been, so if I have a bad year, I can have a year where I make well over 6 figures, and I can have a year where I only make $20,000. I mean, hopefully not many years like that, but like that is fluctuating all the time. And so I never know. And sometimes I'll get paid for like 4 books in a year, and then the next year I still have to write 2 of those books, so I'm not getting any extra money. And so you can't depend on the money, even if the money is good. And so if you have a spouse, it would be better if you were going to do this full time to budget off of them, and and just use your money as like play money or investment money or savings or whatever.
And you're having to guess because you got to do all the pre-tax.
Right.
You constantly calculate, trying to sort of randomly estimate what you're going to make this year.
Yeah, taxes are a nightmare.
Quitting your good paying day job when you're the only revenue source in the household to be a fantasy writer is not the most financially stable decision someone has ever made.
And also, you have to think about how the situation would change. When I quit my full-time job to be an author, I was childless, and I had a spouse that was making a good living, and now I have 2 children that I'm supporting, and that's a very different calculus. So it's a very different it's a choice. And then of course, like if you've been doing that for how many years now, like now what am I supposed to do for a living? Like I can't be a dentist now, like.
And also I will say, you don't write anymore when you write full time. I wrote for years as a full time TV producer, and I probably produced more books back then than I do now. Granted, I have a child now, but you only have a certain amount of creativity in you, and you can definitely work a full time job right on the side, and then still produce books every year or more than one a year.
Yeah, I think you're right. I when I've had like a semester off or something, I thought I'm going to get so much done. And I can't. I mean, one of the things that, I forgot, this is one of my pet peeves. People on Facebook, I wrote 12,000 words today. Like, how many of them were good? Like this constant performance of productivity and success. I think this is one of the things that I find particularly insidious, because writers are the biggest source of misinformation for other writers, because we're constantly trying to demonstrate how successful we are. And nobody wants to admit when things are going badly, because you feel like the wounded wildebeest in the herd, which is about to get picked off.
Right. Because also, I mean, buzz is a thing, right? Like everybody wants the hot author. Yeah. No one wants the author who's like, hey, the last 2 things I shot didn't sell, right? Mm-hmm. And so even saying that in a public forum is very like, you can say that. And then I think don't like hang your hat on any one method or any one guru. If someone, really, there's always the people who are keeping quiet in these groups that are not making these numbers that, everybody is posting. And then when someone says, oh, I did all these things and it didn't work, then you see people getting really granular and being like, well, your cover has red on it instead of purple, and that's the problem, and you're like, okay, come on here. Like, you guys are getting ridiculous. Like, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And of course there are best practices, but no, like if there was a secret solution to only publishing bestsellers, publishers would only publish bestsellers. And that's all there is to it. Nobody knows. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And that goes for, the things that big New York publishers bet big on. They like, there was a big thing the other day about like some author who bought back their like multi-million-dollar contract because it, and this was a publisher that obviously like bet really big on that book, and it didn't,
I'm fond of telling my students the only thing you can control yourself is the quality of your own work.
Right.
Focus on story, focus on developing your voice, and don't look for the shortcut, the solution that's going to launch you to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, because it doesn't exist.
I think if I was giving advice, that I would say, diversify, multiple revenue streams, really try to limit your non-compete options, because until they're paying you a salary, they should not have the right to tell you who you can and cannot work for. Because you have to make a living and you have to put food on the table and things like that. And then, yeah, like Andrew said, like you have to focus on the craft, because it really all does come back to that. And there's a lot of bullshit in publishing, but like your stories are still your stories.
And my advice would be, don't go on Twitter and see these authors who look like they're doing #van life and having the time of their lives, traveling the world and writing in Prague and, like writing on a beach in Saint-Tropez, or because I promise you those people have a lot of problems too. This is what I try to tell my 10-year-old.
They usually have trust funds.
Yeah. I mean, I tell my 10-year-old in 5th grade, because you have the popular kids and she's like, oh, they live these like amazing lives. And I'm like, they have problems too. I promise you there's something that is very unhappy in their lives. Everyone does. And these writers look so glamorous and they are really good at cultivating their images. And especially this day and age when we're all about Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and, it's almost like it's not good enough to write a book. You have to have this author persona that you put out to the world where you're doing #van life. And but it's a fantasy. It's not real.
Right now? Is there like a hashtag? I'm not gonna go look that up now.
Oh yeah,
that was that Gabby girl that died, like murdered. Remember, she had the perfect like she's traveling the country with her boyfriend. No, but I'm just using it as influencer idea. Yeah. But the point remains, these are all fantasies. These are all fakes. And it has nothing to do. I have had so many authors who I've seen them on Twitter and like, wow, they have everything. And then I go meet them at a conference or a convention and they're like, oh my God, let me tell you over some drinks how bad my life is right now. Every time. It always happens. So it's just, don't get caught up in that because you're going to make yourself miserable.
That's actually something that I tell, because as a small press, we work with a lot of first-time authors. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, look, I know that a lot of times the road is hard. Keep that shit off your social media. Social media, if you're going to use it for any kind of promotion, you're on stage when you're on there. You do have a writer persona if you don't keep your social media locked down to people you only really know. And that's your call. You do you. But yeah, I tell them like, hey, if you're sad sacking it on social media all the time, it's not going to sell any books. Telling people nobody bought my short story that I've been shopping for a year is not going to make the next editor who reads that post on Facebook want to buy your next short story.
So they're the beast.
Yeah, it really is. And it's not that we don't have these feelings. I mean, I'm freaking terrified of trying to shop this book I just finished. I've worked on this book for over a year, but I'm going into completely uncharted waters for me. I got 36 published novels, and I do make a living doing this. And I have zero track record with agents, with New York publishers, or with non-fantasy novels. I got nothing to make me look any better than my next door neighbor, Darrell, who's working on his first book ever. And if he finishes it, he's just as likely to sell that book to New York as I am to sell mine. So, but if I don't sell it, I'm not going to be on social media talking about how awful the experience was. I'm going to then say, I've decided to bring this book out through Falstaff. And it'll be a decision I make, not a result of nobody else wanting to give me money for the book.
And on that fractionally upbeat note.
No, but I wanted to say that I don't think that there's things that are wasted. Because I don't know. I don't think that just because something didn't sell at one particular time, it's not going to sell at another time. Or if it didn't sell in one form, it's not going to sell in another form. mean, to bring that back to what we were talking about,
Yep.
you know, these books that we didn't sell last year or the year before, you know, Andrew already has a publisher for his. John apparently is offered Marianne publishing, you know, like there are options that we maybe haven't explored because we're doing other things with our lives right now. Like she's writing like 5 books for Disney or something. Like, so we're all really busy and doing things. So I don't think that this stuff
and that's not new. You know, I mean, what I have a couple of books that John publishes, The Act of Will and Willpower, which were previously published by Tor. And then when I don't know, after a few years, they went out of print with Tor, and John picked them up for Falstaff. But those books I submitted to Tor literally 20 years before they were published, and Tor rejected them.
I was going to say, that's a hell of an editorial process, dude.
No, they were rejected because they were, at the time, considered too unconventional for fantasy, because in the sort of 90s, fantasy all had dwarves and trolls, and you know, it was all, you know, like a lot of bad Tolkien knockoff stuff, frankly.
Yeah, I think no is it just not here, not right now, not this way kind of thing. Because I've definitely taken stuff and reworked it, and you know, it ended up in published work that I've done.
Yeah, I took great delight when the books finally did come out with Tor, and I happened to be in New York, and they took me out for lunch or something, and I brought the rejection letter from the first time they had rejected to show them.
Marianne's first book with Disney, I tell everyone the story, it's like the best story ever. Like she sold it 3 times to different publishers, and the publishers like closed or canceled the book or whatever, and then it, you know, it finally came out and it landed her at her dream publisher. And you know, how many books do you have now?
I got a rejection on that book from Disney 2 days after I gave birth to my daughter. When my daughter was 8 years old, Disney bought the book. And the crazy part is that the editor who had bought the book had worked as the publisher of the previous company who had bought the book and had left, and then they dumped the book after she left because they were changing ways, and she read it 8-9 years later and said, I love this book as much as I loved it the first time around, and I had shopped it everywhere. And I'm like, well, why didn't you buy it the first time around?
Like,
and then I realized she had been the president publisher of Dutton at the time, and she remembered it all those years later. So you just never know. And on that actual cheery note.
Yes, maybe we should stop. So I will put in the description below this video, I'll put links to your various websites so that people can check out your stuff. And in case we do, you know, get together again and have a similar kind of conversation, if people want to put any questions or observations in the comments that we could maybe address at some future time, should we do it, that would be appreciated. And thank you.
Thanks for putting it together.
It's great to see you guys.
I know.
I mean, that's one of the things I love about conventions is that I get to see my friends that I only see once every year or two. I was talking to somebody yesterday and said that was one of the redeeming qualities of Worldcon for me, is I got to see some people that I haven't seen in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't see you.
I know, that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, likewise, it's the primary reason I go to DragonCon.
Yeah. I didn't see John at DragonCon, but I saw AJ a lot.
We were on panels together. It was fun.
We were on a lot of panels because we were the only people there. So they're like, can you do another panel? You want to stay?
Are you going?
Glowy. Like, I don't know. Is it the lighting in there? Like, you just look
great. 2 ring lights on either side.
Nice.
Yeah, it looks good. You're like
my TV producer lighting. It's almost 3-point lighting, but I didn't have a third light for the background, so that's why it's dark.
AJ and I spend more time together at DragonCon than we do in Charlotte.
Well, I was sad I didn't get to do the D&D thing at DragonCon next year.
I just turned in my application.
I can't get the stupid thing to give me the author.
Sign in as a new guest.
Okay.
There's something screwed up with the button for returning guests, and they're still working on that chunk of the website. So if you just tell them you're a new guest, you'll have to fill out it doesn't auto complete all your stuff, but then it'll get through.
Okay. I'm going to cut that bit
Yeah.
So again, thank you to everybody. And
I thought you were cutting everything after Mary said.
yeah, probably, but I'll have to look at what it looks like.
I'm just like, Marianne, tell us about your skincare.
All right, let him do his outro.
So again, thank you very much to everybody, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime. And where's my little stop?